In the darkest blackness of human carnage and suffering, police, fire, and EMS intercede on behalf of mankind. God himself reaches out to those who suffer through their hands. Their service is a clear and unmistakable demonstration that God does not abandon people in the storms of life.
All right, well, welcome everyone to the podcast, and I am sitting here in our studio with retired Byron Fire Chief Mike Lewis, who has been with me for many years now, helping in so many different ways, and is committed to this podcast and anything else that we do to reach out to the first responders in our county and beyond. So, Chief, you may remember 1965, there was a song that was released by a group called The Byrds, Turn, 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 to everything, turn, turn, turn. And I've always remembered that song because it actually comes from a Bible verse, Ecclesiastes, that book of Ecclesiastes.
That's a word.
Yeah, and to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. And I've realized the longer I live, the more I realize that life happens in seasons. Everything happens in seasons.
Right.
And, you know, now that I've reached the ripe young age, being on the 6th floor, many of my colleagues and people that I know and enjoyed years of service with, they're all retiring or preparing to retire. And it's a different feeling for me being at this age that I'm at. I've never been this age before, and so I'm well aware that seasons change and things transition. I know that I am changing, and I don't think any one of us can get away from that. We look in the mirror, and the mirror does not lie. It tells us that we are changing and transitioning.
That's why I've made it a new habit not to look in the mirror in the morning.
Oh boy, I try not to look in the mirror, but sometimes I have to. And so the reason I'm bringing all this up is because we are, we've been operating as State Line Chaplains podcast for some time, and really State Line Chaplains has been operating for a number of years in Ogle County, and we've had some big ideas and some dreams and some aspirations to be able to reach as many first responders and their families as possible. And sometimes, the reality of it is sometimes you realize that a season has run its course. And it's time to transition or change. And really, that is what this podcast is about. And the change that is taking place is that we are now going to be known as the Ogle County Peer Support Network.
Right.
That's a mouthful. But there's a couple of different quotes that I wanted to share. And the first of which is from a guy named Jack Welch, the late Jack Welch. He was the chairman of the board and CEO of General Electric. Everybody knows about General Electric. Jack Welch said something that is very concise and very good, and I think everyone will agree. This is easy to remember. He said this: change before you have to.
Wow.
It's pretty powerful when you
yeah,
think
it
about
is.
it. Change before you have to. We all change, and you're forced into it whether you like it or not. And so for me, I've had to change my mindset. I've had to change my perspective through the years, and I've been active duty. I say active duty in the ministry, the pastoral ministry, and in the chaplaincy. Now I've got 30 years, a little better than 30 years now under my belt, and things have changed dramatically in our nation in that time.
Yes. They sure have.
And
But we were warned.
Well, we were warned, and we knew this was going to happen, but I guess I didn't know it would be like this because I had an idea of what I thought it would be. So change before you have to. And there's an actress, the late actress, I think her name is pronounced Lily Leung, Hong Kong actress, late actress, who said, when in doubt, choose change. Thought, wow, okay, well, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So, we have to assess our effectiveness, and we have to make sure that we're using our resources wisely. And if you're like me, you realize that time is moving pretty quick, and I haven't really achieved or accomplished everything that's in my heart to do. And operating on the current platform or with the same mindset and resources was not getting me there, but it did get me here.
Right.
To this
That's
place.
the important spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're here today to discuss that. Some of you may know the name C.S. Lewis, British author and just a literary scholar. And I think he was actually a lay minister or theologian as well. C.S. Lewis said, "There are far better things ahead than any that we leave behind." Sometimes it's difficult to leave things behind, and really change is hard to undertake because we all like our comfort and we all want to reach a place of operating comfortably. And that's good and bad, isn't it? Sometimes you get to a place where you're very comfortable and no one's going to be able to get you to do anything different. But sometimes change is necessary and absolutely a must. And especially as we've realized that there's a whole new generation or two or three or four that are operating now in the time that we've been doing this.
Yeah, I've noticed as I look around, there's a lot more younger people than what there used to be.
Yeah, and they have a different. I'm not even going to say anything. There's a different mindset there that they have, a different mindset. For one, the phone, this smartphone, I was not raised on the internet. I was not raised with any of these devices because there was no such thing. My grandsons and my grandchildren, on the other hand, this is a part of them. Their iPads, it's a part of them. The internet, it's a part of them. And my children, same thing. It's a part of them. And so they've never known a world without it, but you and I did.
Yeah. I can remember at the department when cell phones were first coming into being, when they got away from the bag phone and they become the smaller types, our fire district put a cell phone on each of our staff officers. So we had to carry that 24/7, 365, so that we could be gotten at any one moment. We had diversified our skill sets, if you will. Our chief was smart enough to realize that you can't do this alone in that position. You need to have people of different mindsets, different background skill sets that you can call on right away. So he had three of us at his disposal, and he put cell phones on each of us, and we carried those. Like I say, they were always with you. It was right there charging at night right by your head, and it was not unusual to get calls any time of the day.
Yeah, it's. I jokingly tell people that we've never been more connected, but we've never been more disconnected.
Right.
As well.
Right.
And it's really a balance that has to be maintained. And speaking of balance, I mean, there are things that we all need and require to maintain a balanced life, a balanced mindset. Certainly we need a balanced perspective. Sometimes life seems like it's all lopsided. So we do need to be balanced, and that's what we are endeavoring to do, is to become a trusted voice, a trusted resource to bring perspective, a voice of encouragement, a voice of support, where we can help at least provide these things, because I know that I need perspective and I need support and I need encouragement, especially as I navigate things in my own life. And as we're sitting here recording this, I was just made aware that I have to take my wife to visit a facility for my mother-in-law. We finally have an opportunity to go tour a facility, possibly could be a place where we bring her to, and she's dealing with dementia very bad. And so that has been a transition, all its own change there, where I'm accustomed to coordinating resources for people. I'm not accustomed to having to have resources coordinated for me. And I have found that this is a very difficult valley to walk through.
Well, I think that's true for first responders. And that's what makes us a little more difficult to care for, I think, is that we always feel like if we didn't get up in the morning or when the tone gets off and think, oh man, I wonder if I'm going to be able to accomplish what I need to on this call, it wouldn't go so well. And so you have to draw from within. Of course, you have your partners that go to battle with you in these calls. And sometimes you are by yourself. You never know what those resources are going to be, but you have to be confident in what you're able to do, and that whenever that tone goes off, that you're going to accomplish the best mission there that you can.
Well, and obviously as a caregiver and someone who is always looking after the needs of others, it's not an easy place to be, and especially when folks ask, "Hey, how is it going?" or "How are you doing?" Well, the temptation is to just unload on them and say, "You want to know how I'm doing? I'm doing terrible. This is a miserable experience, and I don't know what the heck I'm doing." Instead, you just project. You project a different attitude, if you will. And often I have found it does help just to hear perspectives from others who may be going through the same thing or have been through the same thing. And as far as the podcast is concerned, anything goes. We can talk about anything and nothing. And I think it's helpful to, for people to know that, hey, we want to cover subjects and themes and talk about things that are relevant, that are important, that are practical.
To the first responder.
To the first responder and the first responder's family.
Right.
And I know for my own situation and circumstances, sacrifice is a word that really describes what it means to be in my position. Is you are constantly sacrificing time. My own personal private time in the morning gets sacrificed because, the call for help does not come at a convenient time. Never. It's not Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. It happens around the clock at any time. And so I'm always having to sacrifice. And so now I have to find ways to bring balance to, well, I still need to eat proper. I still need some rest. I still need to hydrate. I still need exercise. Mornings work best for me to do my exercise or my working out. But lately, that time gets taken from me. And so it's good to hear from others who are dealing with the same challenge, the challenges, and how do they overcome. So to be a trusted voice, a trusted resource, a voice of encouragement, a voice of support, but also to give the employees a voice through this podcast where we can talk about anything, and nothing would be off limits, truthfully. To invite guests to come and to be able to share openly and honestly, without any repercussions. Of course, there has to be some guidelines and guidance too. I mean, I'm not going to tell you everything I'm thinking, and I don't want you to tell me everything you're thinking because I don't know that I could handle it. So with balance, the proper perspective, and that's what we're going to begin to do differently, is that we're going to have guests on the podcast next week for Telecommunicators Week. One of our very own dispatchers, Taylor, is our guest. Great conversation with her. Of course, after that, we go into Correctional Officer Week. It's in May. And we have one of our very own, Alec, will be a guest there for that. And then for Police Week, we have a patrol deputy who we will be talking to. And then after that, in May, we have EMS Week. And
they're all just back to back.
Man, it's back to back to back. But to be able to speak openly and honestly, and to be that voice, helping one another to realize that, you know what, I'm going through the same stuff. Here's what I do. Here's how I look at it. So the transition, the change is here. So we are letting folks know that the Ogle County Peer Support Network is fully, it's activated. It's been activated. We are engaged. We are officially operating as peer support. And
yes, and peer support, I think for first responders has had a lot of transitional things happen to it as well when you talk about change. But I think as I view it today, with just within the last few years, the what do they call it? Let me find it so I don't mess it up here. I think it's in here. The First Responders Suicide Prevention Act.
Okay.
That gives some real great guidelines. Of course, laws, I don't like mandates any more than anybody else does, but I think I'm looking forward to a very short time being able to deliver under this mode some of the basics of that law, some of the benefits of it as it pertains to an organization, especially to leadership, admins in the different organizations of first responder groups, because I think it's a great tool that's been developed here that we didn't have before. So I'm looking forward to be able to share that a little bit more.
Well, and we are very excited about this opportunity. I mean, this is legislation,
right?
Official, and
not only the state of Illinois but nationwide.
It's nationwide, and obviously you have an expertise and a perspective from the fire service side, which is important because first responders wear different uniforms.
Right. But they all go to the same calls.
Yeah, they all go to the same calls, and we all have the same basic understanding of what our purpose is to serve and to help our communities. And the goal, I mean, we obviously are focusing in on the Ogle County Sheriff's Office, our first responders here, our employees here. We also want to begin to go and look beyond to the first responders in our county,
right?
To include them in on this initiative, and then anyone else outside of our county, outside of our immediate area. We hope to be an example of what's working when it comes to providing peer support. That's really important, is to be an example for others to follow. And we've noticed in our experience, and you and I have attended lots of training together. We've been doing this for a number of years. We noticed that sometimes a department or an organization can be really heavy on the clinical side, having psychiatrists or psychologists or social workers, and that's a good thing. That has its role, that has its place. But then there's very little when it comes to the spiritual side. And the resources have to be brought together.
Right.
We have to make these resources available to our employees and to the departments. And that's from the top on down. That's for everybody. So, here we have, a department chaplain. Clearly, a chaplain would be a what is known as a spiritual resource or a faith-based resource, not to endorse a particular brand or a particular church organization, but as a coordinator of resources, which would be either spiritual resources or anything in between.
Right.
And so the chaplain does reach those who will have a profession of faith, or those who will profess and say, I have no faith. I don't even believe there is a God. Well, that's okay, because you need support too. We all need support. So it's very important that people understand that we're not endorsing a brand or a flavor of spirituality. We're simply saying, no, we recognize that this is valid, that this is a part of our makeup, and that if we're going to keep people healthy, and as the very name of that act is First Responder Suicide Prevention Act, well, in order to help prevent a crisis or a meltdown or a mental health problem, we have to have different resources available. And I'm very pleased that this is a resource now, the peer support network for our county.
Yeah, we haven't come to the table empty-handed either. We have positive results on that. I know personally of several people that you have prevented from committing suicide, or however they word that today. I know that they don't call it that now.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, that has happened. And plus, we've been studying this for over 12 years now. And I will say that, we talk about the science and all of that. That has changed dramatically, which indicates that we still probably don't know what we're doing there is when it comes to the pure clinical side of things. So that's what we'll be addressing is all of those different elements together. And especially for communities like our own, they're not large. There's not a lot of resources dedicated to this. I'm glad to see that this department has dedicated some resources, and not only just check boxes either. They're actually committed to this. That's a lot coming from the leadership side.
It really is, and I've said this before that an initiative like this. An effort like this, where you have a chaplain and a peer support team, it won't really work and reach its full potential if the administration is not fully committed.
And I think part of that, and I think they've demonstrated that here, because you took a 4-day class to become a peer support, a nationally certified peer support leader.
Yeah.
And the other members took 3-day classes, and that was quite a cash outlay for this department to make a commitment by the personnel, yourself.
Absolutely.
That's a lot, and it is nationally certified.
Yeah.
You had to take a test at the end to actually attain that.
Quite a few questions. I think it was 100. It was 100 questions. Yeah.
So I mean, it's not no small deal, and that's where. If you check in, I forget what the actual percentage was. Lexipol has done quite a bit of statistical analysis on it and found out that there's a lot of peer support teams out there that are not. They don't have anyone that's certified.
Well, and if that's the case, then you really don't have a peer support team.
Well, you don't fall under that act then.
Right.
So then the confidentiality of that doesn't hold water.
Isn't that like a major component?
That's like the major platform for it. Otherwise, there's nothing.
Well, and I want to just comment on something, because the confidentiality. Now, just because you have a certified peer support team and we're following the rules for the act itself, doesn't mean that people are going to trust you.
Right.
However, through time and effort, through building relationships, through connecting with people, proving yourself, and I've had opportunities where I've been able to sit with first responders, and the bottom line is this: if a first responder does not trust you, they're not going to tell you anything.
Well, they might tell you stuff, but it won't be the truth.
I'm the same way. I'm the same way, that I know who I can talk to and share my heart, be transparent. And then I know the ones that I will never be transparent with, but I'll put on a good show for them. At this point...
And that's just reality for everybody.
It is. And I think, Chief, at this point, we owe it to ourselves to be honest, to be real with one another. And that's what I'm hoping with this podcast. We can be real and have real discussions and say, look, this isn't working. Or, hey, this is really working good. Or, you know what? It's all well and good to have guests on. Sure, I'll come speak on your podcast, but I'm not going to tell you what I'm really thinking or be truthful with you. I understand that. And the good thing about not only being certified through the peer support but also being a licensed and ordained member of the clergy. I hate to say it, but you share things with me. I mean, people don't know anything, and they won't know anything, because it's not anybody else's business whether or not we've even talked.
Right. And I can attest to that fact with you. There's people I know that have said, "Well, he probably told you," and I said, "No, I didn't even know you talked to him," and that was the truth. I mean, so I know that is in fact the way that you operate, and that's the only reason that you see me sitting across the table from you in this venture, is because I do trust you totally. If I didn't, I wouldn't be here.
Well, and I really appreciate you saying that, Chief. It means everything to me to have your trust. And I think in our role together at the church, there's been times when I have said, listen, I'm asking you something to the effect where I'm asking you to trust me without even knowing why you're trusting me or where we're going, because I don't know where we're going sometimes. And I think it's important to understand that we have to be flexible. As I say, one of the Beatitudes is, blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape. I don't always know where I'm going or what I'm doing. I just know that I'm on my way somewhere. And you learn as you go. It is a work in progress. This podcast is a work in progress. You launch into it because you know it's what you should do. It's what you want to do. And then you learn as you go, and you say, well, okay, that didn't go so well. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it that way anymore. Or, hey, this is going pretty good. Let's just keep up this pace. And then, because things change so rapidly, you get some advice or some input from some of the younger generation, and they're like, man, dude, you're just not hitting the mark. And now I'm not up on all the language nowadays, so I don't even know that I can speak proper. Used to be we can say, you're just not hip, man. You're just not cool. You got to get with it. That's so outdated. I don't know what the kids say nowadays, but the point being is that we want to be a trusted voice, a trusted resource. We want to be a voice for encouragement, for perspective, and to give a voice to our first responders, so that they can be heard. There's so much that you bring to the table, and I've been in some things where we just turn you loose and let you go, and it just flows out of you. You just speak from the overflow. It just comes up out of you, all the years of your service and your perspective. And I always love just listening to you just go and do your thing, and no script. There's just and there's no real easy way sometimes to get through things. You just got to press through, and it's important for people to know that it's worth it. What we're doing is worth it. What you are doing is worth it. What you've done all those years, it's so worth it. It's an amazing opportunity to shine in greater darkness when you put the uniform on of a first responder. And it may not seem like anybody cares. It may not seem like you're validated or backed up, or supported by your department. Your own family may not care. They may not even get it. Perhaps even your family resents the department.
Yeah, you see that happen.
Yeah. But it's worth the effort.
Yeah.
Stay the course.
And I think that's another area that we'll be touching on as well, is as a first responder family back at home, some tips, some tricks, if you will, some ideas for administrations and leaders to utilize within their departments. And what I like really about this is that we are representing the smaller departments. We are in a very rural area. There, like I mentioned, there's not a lot of resources. Most of our firefighters are volunteer. The county ends up covering a lot of the populated areas because they don't have a local police department. I think there's 6 local police departments as well as the sheriff's office, and they all work well together. And that's what we see on the fire side of things too through MABUS, is that hardly anybody goes out the door on a structure fire by themselves anymore. There's what we call automatic aid that's coming in with them. Resources are at an all-time low for everybody, and they're costly as well. But fires haven't gotten smaller.
No, no. Well, and times haven't gotten any easier either. So some of the things, what to expect, what to look forward to. Obviously, the format in which we're doing this, we're sitting here, we're having a conversation, we're recording it, so that people can expect to see a video that will be released that they can watch. Not only will you be able to watch the video and listen to the content, but also we have a platform on Spotify for audio only, so that the podcast will be available on Spotify, and it will be made available on the Facebook page or website, and that's something that's still developing. And there is the private family Facebook page, there is the public Facebook page. But what's on Spotify is available to anyone in the world.
Right.
And we do want the word to begin to spread that, hey, we're covering some things, we're talking about some things we hope will be helpful and insightful for you, and have some guests that we think will be very engaging and interesting. But there's no limit to what I believe we're going to be able to do and accomplish. And to have this opportunity is no small thing. As I said before, sometimes you come to a place where you realize that, wow, we've got to do things differently. Because you and I, having attended so many training sessions, we're not really making progress on the suicide problem among first responders.
No, actually, in what has it been now? Over 20 years that this has been identified as a problem, and there's been solutions thrown at it to see what might stick. But even in spite of all that, the numbers are continuing to rise for all first responder walks. I think it's somewhere, the last statistics that I seen between fire, law enforcement, and EMS, it's right around 300 to 400 people, first responders, a year that perish to suicide, and that's the ones that are getting reported.
Right.
We know that there's a lot that are not reported, and we know that there's a lot that have been covered up to look like accidental versus suicide. I think there's a natural tendency within our brotherhood to try to accomplish that if possible, for the welfare of the family, for the welfare of ourselves probably as well. Just like we started out with this, saying, that first responders we'll jump on the opportunity to help someone else, but we don't seek help ourselves.
Well, and we don't realize that, there's a verse in the Bible talks about the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. We like to pride ourselves on being strong, physically, emotionally, so forth. Bottom line is that there are things happening on the inside of us that we don't understand, and things that we experience in life, and the breakdown, and how detrimental and harmful it is when you're sleep deprived, when your nutrition is lacking, and when you're dehydrated, and then you're just exposed to trauma and disappointments. Sacrificing, and one of the hardest things for me to deal with, and I'll be honest with you, and this is just me being transparent, is not being aligned with my wife in things. And we've been doing this long enough now, and we're coming up on our 35th wedding anniversary in May. And so I've been with my wife for 40 years. I've loved her for 40 years. I hope she still loves me after all this time. But we have to be in agreement. There's got to be an alignment and an agreement. And that's not always easy, because a lot of times I feel like I want to do things one way and she's thinking the other way. And those things weigh heavy on us. If things are not healthy and right at home, how in the world could you be healthy and right on the job?
Recently, they've identified that as the number one stressor that goes against. When we talk about suicide, too, we're really talking about the tip of the iceberg. Marital problems, relational problems, all of those things are under that same umbrella. that's just like the out, if you will. So those are the things that we'll be addressing as well.
Well, and I think it's important to have this platform where we can talk about these things because it's real. And, you know, I have the advantage of having grown up in a law enforcement family. And my grandfather started our legacy back in 1947. Now, when I say my grandfather, I'm talking about a very close relationship that, and being an Italian from the Northeast in the shadows of New York City, so I was raised in a Catholic Italian family, and the closeness and just there was something there that I so cherish and so appreciate having been raised that way. And I was always at my grandparents' house, and I have such wonderful memories of being there, and that was the place I wanted to be more than anywhere else, was to be with them. But what I'm saying is that understanding and knowing some things intimately about police officers, not from the standpoint of putting the uniform on and doing the job, but as the legacy of a police officer, with many officers in the family, both sides of my family, my wife's side, my side, and to this day, I learned some things. I understand some things about the dynamics, about some of the challenges and issues, and I decided that from an early age, I want to be in the middle of this to try to help, because we're all going to someday leave a legacy. And I want my kids to always remember me as someone who wasn't just, absent all the time and didn't really care about the things that were important. I want my kids to remember that, being a loving dad, a loving husband, grandfather, so forth and so on, that they were everything. They meant everything, and to make sure that they know that. And that's how I felt growing up, is that family was number one. Family was always number one. But the job had to be done, and the sacrifices were made, working holidays, working nights, just any number of things. And so a big part of what kept us all together, so family, but faith. We were a family of faith as well, raised in the Catholic faith. And there was just something, I just felt so insulated and protected. And I can't really articulate what I want to at this point, but family and faith do something to give you meaning, to give you purpose, and of course the job. I mean, and I know as men we tend to get our identity from what we do. We identify, hey, what do you do for work? What? Now, when people ask me what I do, I don't want to answer, because then it changes the whole dynamics of the interaction. And no matter where I am, when people find out that I am a pastor / chaplain / peer support team leader / et cetera, so forth, forget it. All of a sudden now, and I told my wife, I said, you have to know that whenever I am anywhere, there's no getting through the store quickly. There's no getting anywhere quickly, because people need to talk, want to talk, are going to engage with you. And that's why if we're going to have any quality time, we have to go away from the community and get somewhere where people don't know us. Now, that's just a little pearl of wisdom. You've got to pull back and get away.
Yeah,
or
that's
else.
very important.
Yeah.
And be able to recognize when that is.
Absolutely.
And I think for first responders, that's probably one of the more difficult challenges of this, is understanding when you've reached that point, or hopefully before you get to that point. And that's another thing we hope to do for the families, is to give them some identifiers, some symptoms, if you will, of their first responder on when that time to pull away is.
Yeah, well, and there has to be this decompressing downtime before you re-engage with your family, because oftentimes, at least in my own personal experience, I find that I haven't decompressed, and I'm not engaged with my family now, so that I'm home but I'm not home. And that's something that my wife and I have a conversation about. After 30 years, you would think I would learn and know better. And I'll be honest, I'm still struggling. I'm still struggling to disconnect from the job and just be fully engaged with the family, because the needs are so great and the calls never stop. And you just, at a certain point, you have to say, listen, I need to unplug. I have to purposefully unplug. My wife and I just talked about this just yesterday. In fact, we were talking about, okay, when do you get time off, really? Well, technically, I know what the answer is, but really, I'm never off, ever. And she knows that, and sometimes it's harder to deal with than at other times. So we need help. We need encouragement, and just one another to hey, what works for you? How do you do this? And, I don't know how my family did it when I was growing up as a kid, but when we were together, I just felt, like I said, insulated. I felt protected. I felt safe. I felt loved. I felt valued. And that's all that mattered. Yes, they were police officers. And yes, they did an incredibly difficult, dangerous job. I mean, many of them have awards, commendations and awards for, shootouts, for who was wounded in action, and so forth. But when we were sitting around the table at home, it wasn't that way. It was granddad, it was cousin, it was uncle, it was brother, it was, it was just amazing. And I would love to go back now to talk to them and say, hey, how did you do that? How did you do that? Because I'm looking at it from my perspective, saying it was a beautiful life growing up in their home, growing up with them. It was amazing. I just can't say enough about it. And I want my kids to feel that way, even though my kids are grown and we've got the grandkids now. So today's my oldest grandson's 13th birthday. So he's an official teenager now. And talk about transitions and changes.
Change, yeah.
Yep, change. So now, as he gets older, of course, there's going to be different, he's looking for different type of interaction and so forth. So we're all in this together, and we owe it to each other. And, we talk about this blue line, this thin blue line, this family. We talk about, in this family, no one fights alone, or no one bleeds alone, no one cries alone, this brotherhood. And you just, let me just throw something out there, just a little bit of levity, but some seriousness as well. You know how many times I've talked to police officers who have said, yeah, you can trust me with your life, but just not your wife. And I thought, I understand that. I know what they're saying, and I get it. The average person doesn't get that, doesn't understand that. We still are human, aren't we? We still have to be careful and mind our P's and Q's in some areas. And think about this. I don't know why I'm saying this, but maybe somebody needs to hear it. There's a very real problem when you develop a more intimate bond with your partner or people at work than you have with your spouse. That's a problem. That's going to bite you later on. That's why you have so many divorces. And like one cop says to me, I'm always looking, he said, I'm always on the hunt for a future ex-wife. What the heck is that?
Wow.
Yeah. Like, no, thank you. I want to hang on to my wife as long as I can, as long as she'll tolerate me. But there are things that we can discuss and talk about to make sure that, hey, listen, protect your family, protect your marriage, insulate your family life as best as you can. There are some things that you have to it's give and take, and are there really hard set rules to this? No, it has to stay fluid.
Right. Very dynamic.
Yeah. Well, Chief, honestly, we're at the beginning and we've entered into this new season. I believe that there are great and exciting things to come because there is such a sense of genuineness here that I sense from the administration, where this is wanted, this is valued, this is seen as important. It is an important resource, and I would not want to be a part of this if it were any less than that.
And I like the way that they're looking forward for this to be not only just the sheriff's department, but all first responders for the whole county.
Yeah.
And that really hits me where I would like to be in this as well. And I'm really looking forward to where this goes, where this takes us. Change is not a 4-letter word.
No.
No. And I'm ready.
I'm ready too. And now that I've reached the 6th floor, I'm ready. I still feel that there's a fire burning in my belly. I'm passionate. I'm not looking for retirement. I'm looking for refirement. So if we are to ask someone to be a guest, if they are asked to be a guest on the podcast, what can they expect? Well, they can expect to be on camera. They can expect to have it captured. And so, we're learning as we go. I wanted to make sure I fixed my hair just right. I make sure I'd shaved before I come.
I knew I forgot something.
Oh, boy. Because it is important. I think it's important that we add that visual component as well. But so that they can expect to be on camera. They can expect to have just a conversation. Questions that'll be asked. If there are questions, we'll do our best to let you know ahead of time that, hey, here's what we're going to ask. As we found that when we pre-record it, for now we're pre-recording, then it's easier to edit. So if we're having a conversation and we make a mistake, we don't like the way it came out, we say, okay, well, stop that. Let's start all over.
Pause.
Yeah. And then you just do it all over again.
Yeah.
You can expect to just have a very honest conversation. We would also like to know any themes or topics that would be of interest to the employees, to the listeners, and to the first responders and their families. Hey, what types of things should we talk about and cover? I mean, I can come up with ideas and thoughts. I mean, I'm full of it, full of endless stories. I can share all kinds of stories and engagements and encounters, but we want to be relevant and practical. It's like, well, let's address this, and understanding that, you know what, everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Everyone is entitled to their own perspective. And some of the things that we may say and that we may share may not work for everybody. Merely a suggestion or a thought, merely another perspective, because I believe that it takes all of us working together.
That's what this is all about in the first responder community, is everyone working together. And when that happens, it's a beautiful thing. Incidents are mitigated, but friendships are knitted. When you see out in the field where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, the officers, the firefighters, the EMS personnel, the first responders, telecommunicators, the corrections, they all get along pretty well, really.
Yeah.
And do a fantastic job out there for their communities.
Well, and it's easy to feel isolated sometimes, and really it can be a very lonely thing, obviously, and it's also important to note that we get it. We know that you don't always know what's going on or have all the answers, but yet you have to act like you do. You have to act like you're in charge and in control. But together I believe we can see and do great things, and I'm really excited about this. So the Ogle County Peer Support Network is official. It is hereby sanctioned and authorized and blessed and ordained into service, and we will be operating as the Ogle County Peer Support Network. So I want to thank everybody for listening in. To just recap, what we're trying to accomplish is to be a trusted voice, to be a trusted resource, to be a voice of perspective and encouragement and support, and also to provide a platform for our first responders and their families to have a voice as well, because we all want to be heard, and we all need to know that we do matter. You matter. I matter. We all matter, and we're all in this together. So on that note, I think I'll just say thank you all, and stay tuned, because next week, Telecommunicators Week, we love our dispatchers, and we will have a great session with our very own Taylor. So we look forward to that, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll see you soon.
Dispatch from Route 7 Command.
Man, go ahead.
See the chaplain at this location?
10th floor. Attention 3392. 3392, you're needed at the 8000 block of Route 7, multiple vehicle accident. Please acknowledge.
3392 is en route, 8000 block, Route 7.
10-4.
In the darkest blackness of human carnage and suffering, police, fire, and EMS intercede on behalf of mankind. God himself reaches out to those who suffer through their hands. Their service is a clear and unmistakable demonstration that God does not abandon people in the storms of life.